In the vast pantheon of American charlatans who have made careers from the systematic destruction of rational thought, few have achieved such vertiginous heights of self-parody as Candace Owens. Here is a figure who has managed, through sheer force of willful ignorance and opportunistic pandering, to transform herself from a mere political provocateur into something far more grotesque, a one-woman crusade against the entire edifice of human knowledge. One might charitably suppose that there exists some lower boundary to intellectual degradation, some bedrock of basic competence beneath which even the most shameless grifter cannot sink. Yet Owens, with the determination of a medieval flagellant, continues to excavate new depths of absurdity with each passing pronouncement. The woman who once merely trafficked in garden-variety political mendacity has now declared herself an apostate from what she calls the cult of science, a phrase that would make even the most enthusiastic young Earth creationist wince with second-hand embarrassment. Consider the breathtaking trajectory of this decline. We began with a figure who positioned herself as a contrarian voice in political discourse, which, however disagreeable, at least operated within the realm of subjective interpretation. But Owens, apparently unsatisfied with mere political heterodoxy, has now embarked upon a wholesale rejection of empirical reality itself. She has proclaimed vaccines to be poison, dismissed the existence of dinosaurs as absurd, and, in what must surely represent some kind of epistemological event horizon, refused to commit to the spherical nature of our planet. The vaccine denialism alone would suffice to mark her as a public menace. Here is someone who, with the casual sociopathy of a Victorian mill owner, advises parents to eschew childhood immunizations based on nothing more substantial than her own spectacular misunderstanding of basic biology. She speaks of vaccine inserts and FDA warnings with the authority of someone who has never actually read them, cherry-picking fragments of text while ignoring the mountain of evidence that has saved millions of lives. When she declares that she would refuse the COVID vaccine even on her deathbed, one is tempted to observe that at least she possesses the courage of her convictions, however catastrophically misguided those convictions may be. But it is her recent descent into flat earth agnosticism that truly beggars belief. "I'm not a flat earther, I'm not a round earther," she proclaimed, as if geometric neutrality were some kind of intellectual virtue rather than an admission of cognitive surrender. This is not skepticism, it is the abdication of thought itself. To witness someone with access to the sum total of human knowledge declaring themselves uncertain about the shape of the planet is to observe a kind of voluntary lobotomy performed in real time for public consumption. The dinosaur denialism represents yet another station on this Via Dolorosa of stupidity. Owens has declared the entire paleontological record, the careful work of thousands of scientists over centuries, the painstaking excavation and analysis of countless fossils, to be some kind of elaborate hoax perpetrated by modern Satanists. One struggles to imagine the logistics of such a conspiracy. Presumably, these Satanists have been planting fake bones in sedimentary rock for the past several hundred years, all in anticipation of deceiving Candace Owens in 2024. What makes this particularly galling is not merely the ignorance itself, ignorance can be remedied, but the prideful celebration of that ignorance as some kind of virtue. Owens presents her rejection of scientific consensus not as a failing, but as a liberation, casting herself as a brave truth-seeker who has escaped the shackles of empirical evidence. She has transformed intellectual incuriosity into a brand, monetizing the very act of not knowing things. And now, in what can only be described as a crescendo of paranoid delusion, she claims that the President of France has ordered her assassination. Emmanuel Macron, she would have us believe, has dispatched elite tactical units to eliminate her because of her investigations into his wife's gender. The narcissism required to believe oneself important enough to warrant international assassination is matched only by the detachment from reality necessary to broadcast such claims without a shred of evidence. One must acknowledge, in the interest of completeness, that even this broken clock has occasionally stumbled upon the correct time. Her willingness to discuss the Epstein files and question certain aspects of American foreign policy represents at least a deviation from the standard right-wing script. But to praise her for these observations is rather like congratulating a chimp for successfully identifying a banana. It represents the absolute minimum threshold of pattern recognition, not any kind of intellectual achievement. The tragedy here is not merely personal, but societal. Owens commands an audience of millions, each of whom receives their daily dose of anti-scientific propaganda wrapped in the flag of independent thinking. She has created a feedback loop of ignorance, where questioning established fact is confused with critical thought, where the inability to distinguish between credible sources and YouTube conspiracy videos is celebrated as open-mindedness. The French existentialist Albert Camus once wrote about the absurd as the confrontation between our human need for meaning and the unreasonable silence of the world. But Owens has achieved something different. She has made herself the ambassador of absurdity, the herald of unreason, the prophet of a worldview so comprehensively divorced from reality that it achieves a kind of perverted grandeur. What we witness in Candace Owens is not merely the failure of an individual intellect, but a symptom of a broader cultural malaise, a society that has so thoroughly confused contrarianism with wisdom that it celebrates ignorance as insight. She represents the apotheosis of an anti-intellectual movement that mistakes the rejection of expertise for independence of thought, that confuses the inability to understand science with the courage to question it. In a more rational age, someone who publicly questioned the shape of the earth would be gently directed toward remedial education. In our current moment, they are given television shows and podcast deals. Owens has built an empire on the foundation of not knowing things, transforming scientific illiteracy into a lucrative career. She stands as a monument to our cultural moment, prosperous, confident, influential, and wrong about absolutely everything. The final irony is that Owens depends entirely on the very science she rejects for her platform, the technology that broadcasts her inanities, the medicine that keeps her healthy enough to spread her dangerous nonsense, the satellites that carry her signal around the spherical Earth she questions, all products of the scientific method she has declared herself liberated from. She is a parasite denouncing her host, a beneficiary of human knowledge railing against its very existence. Future historians, assuming we survive long enough to have them and they possess the stomach for such archaeology, will marvel at this moment. They will wonder how a civilization that put humans on the moon and decoded the human genome could simultaneously elevate someone who questions whether dinosaurs existed. They will study Candace Owens not as a political figure but as a symptom, a warning sign of what happens when a society loses its mooring to empirical reality and begins to mistake confident ignorance for brave truth-telling. Until that distant day of reckoning, we are left to endure the spectacle of Owens' continued devolution, watching as she discovers new frontiers of wrongness to explore, new depths of anti-scientific zealotry to plumb. One awaits with morbid curiosity her next revelation. Perhaps the germ theory of disease is a hoax, perhaps gravity is optional, perhaps the sun revolves around the earth. There seems to be no bottom to this particular well of ignorance, no claim so preposterous that Candace Owens will not eventually make it. In the end, Owens serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of building an identity around contrarianism without the intellectual framework to distinguish between productive skepticism and destructive nihilism. She has become a living rebuttal to the notion that all opinions deserve equal weight, a walking advertisement for the value of expertise, a human reminder that the universe is not obligated to conform to our ignorance, no matter how profitable that ignorance might be.